Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show. Thanks for listening. So before I introduce today's guest and jump into the show, I just want to talk just a little bit about our private membership program called the Fit Dad Nation Inner Circle. And it's something that I'm really, really proud of. And it's a hub, a community for dads looking to reclaim their health and fitness. And, as you know, this industry is filled with fake coaches and scammers and people just looking to make a quick buck by selling you shit. And I hate that about this business. So I created this program that just cuts through all of that. It's totally interactive with monthly and even weekly challenges. We have live Q&As, full workout programs, tutorials, weekly mobility workouts, and even quarterly transformation challenges. So if you're looking for a tribe of like-minded dads working towards the same things and you're ready to get to work, take a look at the program. It can be found at fdnic.com. It's the Fit Dad Nation Inner Circle, and I'll link to it in the show notes. So my guest today, someone that's reached out to me not too long ago about coming on the show, and I thought it was a perfect opportunity to talk with somebody in the fitness industry that's helping men get bigger and stronger. So a lot of the folks I talk with, we talk about weight loss. And his name is Bryan Parady. He's the owner of bonestobulk.com. He's an author, personal trainer, and he runs the Bones to Bulk podcast. And so I'm actually really excited to hear a story and chat with him because, I too have spent a lot of time as kind of the skinny guy, and you'll hear a story in a minute. But I can just really relate to a lot of what he's been through. So Bryan, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. So I want to hear your story. So, there's not a lot of guys doing what you're doing. I mean, there's certainly a market for it, the hardgainer, the guys that have a tough time putting on muscle or putting on weight. And you've got a pretty interesting story from your own life, and I guess you've turned this into a business. So maybe tell us about that.
Sure. So my story began roughly 12 years ago, and it's kind of interesting how fitness came on my radar. I was going through the Rocky movies for the first time ever. And as I was watching them, I was just, I want to have muscle. I was a tiny kid. I weighed 118 pounds, super skinny, and felt very insecure about my body. I always had. I got picked on and just kind of, slight comments about my size, and it didn't help my confidence. I kind of stooped when I walked because of it. And it was a whole kind of mindset / physical, almost instability that I felt. Mm-hmm. And so, I was watching these movies. I was like, I want to gain muscle. And so the very next day I went out to a sporting goods store. I bought a bench, put it in my house, and started going at it, lifting weights. And didn't really know what in the world I was doing. Did everything wrong. And about a year in, I was still lifting weights, but nothing was changing. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And so I kind of came to the point where I either need to really figure out what I'm doing or I need to quit. And so thankfully, I really began studying and pouring into, what it takes to do that and the nutrition side, and all the pieces started to fit together. And I started to put on muscle. And about 47 pounds of muscle later, I really fell in love with it. And that was over the course of several years. That didn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. And then I just, really just fell in love with fitness, became a personal trainer, and it kind of just started where I would talk to people who were in my same situation. And out of that, it just became more and more of a habit for me. And I decided to turn that into a business. So that's kind of where I'm at today.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because when you talk about, oh man, I can't seem to gain weight, because you hear it from time to time, nothing I do, I can't put on any muscle. And everyone always says the same thing, right? Oh, I wish I had your problems. But
yes.
It's a real thing though. Like you, when I finished high school, I was, I think 5'6", about 120 pounds. Okay. My nickname was a stick man. I mean, I literally was skin and bones. I read your story, very similar. I was bullied. I was picked on. I was never popular. I didn't date. And yeah, it was a problem. And I literally spent until I was 30, I want to say like 32, trying to get bigger. I mean, I just busted my ass in the gym constantly. And yeah, it took years and years and years of figuring things out, trying to figure out how much to eat, what to eat, how to train. And, eventually, kind of figured it out. But now, I'm 48 now. So now it's, my metabolism is still actually probably faster than most, but it's certainly easier for me to add a few extra pounds. Not like I had this goal in mind for about 10 years. I couldn't get above 160, and I'm about 6 feet. So, I couldn't get above 160 no matter like what I tried. Like, I tried eating, 3,000, 4,000 calories. I was training constantly, and I really, really struggled. So, I want to hear, you being the expert in this market, I want to hear kind of your thoughts on, what are we doing wrong? Like, what are the guys that tell you, man, I can't put on weight? And you're like, well, that's obviously not true. We all know that you can. You're just, not doing everything properly. And, this is what you teach, right? These are your courses, these are your programs, this is your coaching, right? You teach men how to get bigger the right way. Right.
So it's twofold. It's obviously weight training in the proper way. So when it comes to weight training, there's just such a lack of knowledge when it comes to weight training. We think that if we just go in and throw some weights up, regardless of how we're doing it, that we'll start growing muscle. And that's just not the case. It's not about, even how much you can lift or anything like that. And so many times we place such an emphasis on that to where it stifles us being able to lift properly. And it more comes down to, slowing down on your repetitions, really focusing on each and every single rep. So often I got to get through this set and I'm going to pump out the reps as fast as I can. And it doesn't really facilitate muscle growth. And so a lot of it is slowing down and really figuring out the proper form with your workouts. That's key to begin with so that you can start growing muscles the proper way. And the second part, which is much larger, is the nutrition side. When I started, I ate a ton of food. I don't even want to think about how many calories I probably consumed in a day. It was probably absurd. But it was all garbage. I ate, ice cream and pizza and fatty fast foods and drank soda like nobody's business. And everything combined was just horrible. And my mindset still at the time was, well, as long as I'm lifting weights, I'll be okay. And even people who were quote unquote, in the fitness realm told me, well, just if you're bulking, just eat whatever you want. And I was, and it wasn't working. And it wasn't until I started eating not only the correct amounts of food, because yes, when you have a fast metabolism and are active, you have to eat a lot of food, but it's eating the right kinds of foods, the kinds of foods that's going to facilitate muscle growth and not just, go in one end and out the other and not do anything for you. And so it was only when those whole pieces started to come together that I started to see progress. And so it's not a matter of you can't, it's a matter of you've got to get your nutrition levels on point in addition to lifting properly.
Sure. Would you say most guys tend to undereat or are they not training hard enough or heavy enough? Because, at the end of the day, we both know that if you're eating just a metric ton of food, your body has no choice but to start gaining weight. Whether it's muscle or not is a different story, but it's certainly going to happen if you're eating that right. But obviously we talk, there's a lot more to it. But in your experience, do you find that guys are just underestimating the amount of food they're eating, or they're just not, like you said, concentrating on the actual movements? They're not getting as much as they could out of each workout and each exercise?
So it's definitely a combination of the two, but I do see much more on the nutrition side as being the problem. And often what I'll see is someone will tell me, well, hey, I'm eating, 4,000 calories a day, and now I have a gut, but I'm not putting anything on elsewhere. And just like you said, if you're consuming a certain amount of calories, yeah, eventually that has to go somewhere. But when it's just junk food that you're eating, it's not going to build any muscle. And it's going to go, especially if you're skinny, that weight is immediately going to go to the gut. And so what I often see is people who have done that and then they quit because they're like, well, I tried it and it just didn't work for me. And so what I try to really redirect is, let's not necessarily just break down how much you're eating a day, but also break down what you're eating in a day. Is your body able to process the food that you're eating so that it can contribute to your muscle growth? Or is it just going straight to your fat cells, which is counterproductive to what you're trying to do?
Sure. You've probably seen this recent trend, and this is blowing up on social media, especially Instagram. everybody is preaching calories, but nobody's talking about the quality. It's all about, and it's driving me crazy, but it seems like it's just spreading like wildfire. Like everybody's using the same memes and the same infographics, and it doesn't matter what you eat, as long as you're eating less than you need, you're going to lose fat. And they're just missing so much of that, and that's largely applied to fat loss and weight loss. But on the other side of the coin, it's the same thing. You can't just overeat and expect that you're going to get big, strong, and muscular, right? You have to be eating the right foods, and quality is extremely important. It's right up there with the quantity, but it gets downplayed so much. You've probably seen that quite a bit as well.
Yes, absolutely. You're spot on there. And that's why so many people struggle. And like I said, I was told that when I started off. I went to some people who were in good shape and lifted, and I was told that just make sure you eat this amount, and it doesn't matter what you eat. And that wasn't working for me. And I was like, well, why are these people telling me this when it's not? But yeah, exactly like you said, it's, and it doesn't just apply to actually being able to gain muscle, but I truly believe that, we've become so ingrained that fitness is solely about aesthetics. And don't get me wrong, that is a part of it. That was my motivation to begin with. But I also want to have more energy. I want to feel good. I don't want to eat a meal and then feel like crap the rest of the day. And so it's this whole body health that I truly believe in. And when you're eating a nutritious diet with the proper proteins, the proper carbohydrates, and the proper fats, it's all contributing to all those different things, not only building muscle, but giving you more energy so that you can go harder in the gym and have more muscle growth on your lifts, and so that you're able to sleep better at night so that you can repair those muscles. And so food plays such a massive role in all this, even outside of just the initial, well, it's going to put muscle on me.
Yeah, and you touched on something that's super important, especially for the guys in my community. Most men in my community are dads, 35 to 45, and energy is at the top of the list. Yes, of course, everybody wants to look better, right? There isn't a person on earth that doesn't want to look better, but energy is so important, having more. And yeah, that's going to come from not only your activity, but the quality of your foods.
Absolutely.
You've seen it time and time again. Guys busy with their careers, families, they're run down. And they typically eat, the typical American diet sucks.
Absolutely.
And it's just sapping energy. And, I read something of yours, and you were talking about super restrictive diets, and you and I agree on this as well. And, I don't believe in quote unquote diets because they imply temporary, and especially super restrictive ones, and ones that, like eliminate all carbohydrates, or it's nuts, right? So
yes,
the keto's all the rage. Every time I post something about it, I get half the people love it, half the people hate it. Some people swear it's the best thing ever. Some people think it's the worst, and it's an individual thing. Of course, obviously, we both know it's very difficult to sustain, extremely difficult.
Sure.
But when you're putting together meal plans and you're talking to your clients, and these are guys again that are going to need to eat in a surplus. They're going to have to have a ton of food, right? And we'll get into supplementation in a bit. But what do you typically suggest for the majority of? Obviously, everybody's going to be a little bit different. But what are some of the main things that you have in your meal plans and with your clients?
So the first thing I typically do is I kind of sit down with them and I'm like, you've got to understand the foundation of food before you can build on it. And what I really emphasize people to do, even it doesn't have to be this long-term thing, but even for a month, is to track calories. And I know that can get tedious, but not for the sake of keeping track of how many calories you're eating even, but to really discover what is in the food you eat. Because I know for me, when I started, I was oblivious to what was really in my food. We have these concepts of what we think is healthy, when in reality, a lot of those things are not healthy. And then other things that we're conditioned to think that are not healthy actually are healthy for us. And so that's usually the first thing that I try to get people to do, is just understand what's in your food and teach them how to read a nutrition label. What does it mean when it says there's 20% of that product comes from protein? Like, how is that figured out? Because I think that starts to lay the foundation just to get the process thinking more about your food. And then from there, kind of the building blocks that I always tell people, start off with getting your meat lean. So, cut out the pork and the fattier cuts of beef and whatnot, and try to stick with chicken or turkey and fish, and kind of build that as your platform. And, if you're vegetarian, I have nothing against that. There's plenty of healthy proteins out there for vegetarians from beans or lentils, and there's a whole plethora. That's not personally what I teach, but that is viable options. And then kind of shift into the healthy carbohydrates, because as you said, keto is all the rage. And if I had $1 for every time I knew somebody who did keto, it worked for a little while, and then as soon as they went off, everything went to hell, I'd be rich by now. Mm-hmm. But so teaching what healthy carbohydrates are, and how there are healthy carbs that our bodies need, and how there are also very bad carbs that we need to stay away from. And then in addition, teaching the importance of whole healthy vegetables and fruit being added into the diet. And so that's kind of where I start when I sit down with someone, and just kind of lay out the very basics, and then slowly build in from there, because food can be overwhelming. Like I still daily learn new things about food that I didn't know before as I research more and really dive into it more. Like, it's kind of almost a lifelong pursuit of food. So I never expect somebody to just immediately from day one have their diet on point. It's a learning process. It's a learning curve.
Sure.
And so that's kind of where I start with people with food.
Okay. And you and I as coaches, have to deal with the fact that there's so much misinformation or bro science out there. Like, I'm still meeting people, and I'm sure you are as well, that are, in their 40s or 50s even, that still refuse to believe that it's okay to eat after 7 o'clock at night. Or that not all the carbs are bad. Carbs are making me fat. I'm like, no, carbs are not making you fat. Yes. And so it's so ingrained because all they hear on social media and on, these blogs, it's carbs are bad.
Yes.
I mean, and now, so you have to overcome those things. And even, how hard that is to get that out of the mindset of somebody that's been led to believe for the last 20 years that, let's say, carbs are bad, or they can't eat it after a certain time, or all these little things that, if you think about it, don't really make a lot of sense, but because they've just accepted it as truth, like, there's nothing you can say. Like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yes.
Like, well, have you looked at it this way? Well, yeah, it's so frustrating. And then the whole there are no good foods or bad foods thing. That's also another topic that drives me crazy. Is that's being spread all over the internet as well. Well, no foods are really bad. I said, Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
Let's take a Pop-Tart. That's a bad food, right? There's nothing good in there for you. I mean, they're delicious. No. I love Pop-Tarts. But they're horrible for you.
Yes.
Well, no. It's like if the food isn't helping you, I think that it's hurting you. And
absolutely,
that's just lost. Now, I do think it's coming at some point. There's going to be a big fallout on social, where all these fake coaches that are selling this garbage are going to crash. But
sure,
in the meantime, people are getting rich off this garbage, and it's messed up, man.
Yes,
it's messed up. So let's talk about the training piece of it, because when you think, I want to add muscle and get bigger, most of us assume we got to hit the gym, a couple hours a day, train really, really heavy and hard, low volume with, low reps. And that's, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But, you've spoken about even using bands, body weight training to do what you do.
Yes.
So I want to hear more about that, and kind of put the whole notion of I have to go in and just lift every weight in the gym to get bigger, because it's not true.
Correct. And just like with food, there's so many, things that we pick up on from social media, or just that were ingrained in our heads. It's the same with the gym. And so much of it is just false. I know so many people who kind of a couple big things that I always hear is, one is, I don't have energy for the gym. Mm-hmm. And what people don't understand is, once you start working out, you have more energy. It's not that your energy goes down. It actually replenishes your energy. And what a lot of people too, like you just mentioned, think, well, you've got to have hours and hours to spend in the gym. You really don't. You can get an amazing workout in 45 minutes if you're focused and are basically well versed in what you need to do in there. There's so much wasted time in the gym that I see from, nothing against people conversing in the gym, but especially with phones now. And I'm I'm not perfect on this. I've been guilty of this myself, but there's so much wasted time in the gym to where we're resting way too long in between sets, which extends our workouts. But the biggest thing I try to tell people is when you are starting off in the gym, first off, don't start comparing yourself to other people in the gym, because it's easy to get in there and think, oh, well, I'm not lifting hardly anything compared to the person next to me. And it's not about how much you lift. To me personally, I have more respect for the person who is using lightweight and is straining as hard as they can and just pumping out as many reps as they can until failure, as the person who's over there pumping some insane 1 rep max and then is done.
Right.
Because 1 rep maxes have their place, but in actuality, they didn't get to a 1 rep max by just doing 1 rep maxes. It takes that time under tension, that constant building. And so my main things is, slow down in the gym, because when it comes to your actual repetitions, because again, I see so many people just bang out their reps as fast as possible so that they can see how many they get. Or if they're aiming for a certain number, well, I just got to get to 15. So the faster I get to 15, the faster I'm done with the set. When in reality, it's typically when you start speeding through your reps, your form gets off, and often you're using the momentum of your body to power through the exercise. And so you're no longer even targeting the muscle that exercise is for. Mm-hmm. And so I try to really set people up with a basis of exercises. You don't need to know every crazy exercise in the book when you're starting. Even later on, you don't need them all. You need some basics that work each of your muscle groups. And then I teach the concepts of how to break up your muscle groups. You don't want to work out the same muscle group every day. And how do you break those up? Maybe you do chest and triceps one day, and then back and biceps on another day. And to learn how to break up the muscle groups so that they have the adequate time to rest in between. And then how to make the most of your time in the gym when that comes to really focusing on the time under tension by slowing down on your repetitions and making sure that you're going until failure on your sets, because that's going to put the maximum strain on your muscles without having to throw an insane amount of weight on the bar and possibly injure yourself when you're starting. So there's just a few of the things that I try to instill people who are just starting off to try to redirect, a lot of the bad thinking when it comes to the gym.
Sure. And, you said the basics, that's a key word, I think. I think a lot of people overcomplicate stuff and want to try the latest, fanciest exercise. And, what I teach is focus and keep it simple, like push, pull, carry, sprint. Keep it simple and, focus on those big movements, the push-ups, the pull-ups, the squatting, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And, let all those other things, can be supplementary, but
sure.
Just focusing on a handful of those things, and push a sled, drag a tire, sprint once or twice a week.
Absolutely.
And those things can do great for, growth hormone and testosterone and, which obviously going to help as you try to put on muscle.
Sure.
So as far as your macros and your, we talked a little bit about a diet. Again, a lot of people vilify carbohydrates, think they don't have a place, and, they do. I'm a big fan of more of an ancestral approach to eating. I just, like a primal, a paleo diet. I just really enjoy and feel great eliminating like breads and pastas and grains.
Sure.
I just feel better. It's not for everybody, but as far as the typical setup for macros, and specifically protein, because a lot of people assume we need just a shit ton of protein to put on
right.
weight, and you're overdoing it, and it's just not necessary, and it's probably counterproductive and could be hurting you maybe down the line.
Right.
But, where do you start at with all of that when you're setting up macros and protein requirements for putting on muscle?
So, typically I'll sit down and again, it varies from person to person, but I'll typically at least for starters sit down and figure out a baseline for that person's. And there's so many websites and apps you can get this from, but, calculate based on your age and your weight and your height, what's kind of the baseline for your calories, and use that as a starting point. And usually there's adjustment to be made on that. But That's as far as your overall calorie count. And I try to keep it simple. It's hard for someone starting off to keep track of everything and also track all their calories and everything. And so what I try to tell people is, divide your plate up into 3 parts. And the largest, divide your plate in half. And half of that plate should be some kind of, what I say is any kind of vegetable. I don't think there's a bad vegetable out there. Mm-hmm. But make half of your plate some kind of vegetable that you enjoy. And then with the other half of the plate, divide that into 2 sections. And one of them is going to be a little bit larger, and that's going to be for your protein source. So whether it's again, turkey or chicken or fish or beans or whatever, your protein choice is. Personally, I like the meat sources, but, and then the remaining, which is just going to be a small third, it's not even a third, it's less than a third, is going to be a complex carbohydrate. So whether that's, brown rice or quinoa or a sweet potato, but something in that regard that's going to help give you energy, that's a healthy carb, that's going to help your muscle growth. And so that's kind of what I tell people, break your plate up into that. Don't just view, well, I've got to have a pound of this and 4 ounces of that. That comes in later, especially as you advance in your growth, because the small things begin to matter a little bit more. But especially at first, just kind of divide your plate up, and that can be a good starting point for a lot of people. Okay.
I mean, and we know that if you don't have enough protein, you can't build lean muscle. And, what I teach, from my understanding, somewhere between, 0.7 and 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight is more than enough. Where do you stand with the requirements that you teach?
It's pretty similar. I usually say 1 to 1.25 because that's personally what works best for me. Mm-hmm. But again, everything requires modification. So a lot of times with clients, if things aren't working exactly, we'll adjust that a little bit. But I would say around 1 gram per pound is also a kind of a base point for what I teach as well. Because like you said, too much protein, your body can't process it, and it's really almost counterproductive. And then not enough is not going to facilitate the muscle growth. So,
yeah. And again, there's so much information and misinformation out there. You can't eat more than 30 grams per meal.
Right.
It's just, some study will tell us that if we have too much, it could damage our kidneys. And some others will say that's nonsense. It'll be converted to fat. Your kidneys will be fine, blah, blah, blah. So, that's the thing, is that the general public, you just don't know. You don't know what to believe because, quote unquote, reputable sources will tell you just conflicting information constantly, especially if you're on social and you're following any kind of fitness professionals. God forbid it's a celebrity trainer or some bullshit like that where that's just, don't get me started on that. But yeah, it's a very overwhelming for people. And not only that, but everywhere you look, it's something different. So, you can't go wrong with just, first of all, you just use your head. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't even think, this doesn't make sense. I don't know why,
Right.
I just spent the last 40 years eating a diet 60% carbohydrates, and now I'm going to do the keto, which is 0%. I'm going to be fine. You're like, hold up, let's back this up. Think about this for a while. What's going to happen to your body, right? It's going to revolt, and it's going to tell you to, it's going to be a mess. So that's what people are doing, and it's just, that goes for dozens or hundreds of other things.
And the worst part about that is when someone tries something like keto or whatever other fad diet's going on, it'll work for them for a little while, and then usually they go back and even worse to a worse starting point. And that gives them more of a negative attitude towards fitness because they associate the diet with fitness, even though it really has nothing to do with each other. And then they're more apprehensive to try again because it failed them.
Yes.
And so it does more to hurt true fitness and health than anything.
Oh, yeah. And you do that 10 times, 12 times, it's, you're yo-yo dieting, but you have a very sour taste in your mouth. You don't want to do it. You believe you can't do it. There's no way you can do it.
Right.
But it's just this, because we demand new and shiny, there has to be a new fad, a new something out there constantly for people to buy, because that's what we want to buy.
Yes.
I don't sell it, which is, in all honesty, has hurt my business over the last 5 years because I refuse to play that game of, buy this, you have to have this, this is the best, because it's not. Is my program that I sell good? Yes. Is it heads and shoulders above everything else? No, of course not. It's nuts. But in order to get ahead, or I would say to make quick money anyway, you have to play that stupid marketing game, and you have to hype everything up, and it just bothers me to no end. It really does. Deeply.
For sure. And sadly, I don't know that there will ever be an end to the fad diets. Once keto runs its course, I'm convinced it'll be something new.
Of course.
And the only thing we can do is just try to really educate people and to make smart choices with what they eat. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And so it's just a matter, and that's really my sole hope. I want people to be educated enough to be able to stand there and think for a minute, like, hey, is this diet really a good option? Because my internal gut's telling me no, despite the fact that everybody's jumping on the bandwagon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why, I wanted to have you on this show, is because, I watched your stuff, and I actually went through a bunch of your videos, and, you're not pitching. What you're doing is educating, which, in my opinion, is the better way to do it. We don't want to be sold something, especially something we don't need.
Right.
And you just have a very easy way about you, and you're trying to teach. And I didn't really see any sales pitches in there, which is very typical in this business. It's always buy my program for $19.99.
Yes.
I had actually, I'll tell you this quick story. A couple of years ago, I was working with this guy. I had been working with him for 3 years. We had trained hard. We had figured out his diet, and I show up one day to his house, and he's like, "Oh, I'm doing the keto." I said, "What?" He said, "Oh, I found this guy online, Drew Manning, I think his name is, the Fit to Fit guy." And I bought his program for like $129. I said, first of all, I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" So after I go over that, turns out, it basically got like this half-assed guide on eating, in a ketogenic way. Like, it was just crap. Like,
yeah.
When this guy, obviously, he was on Ellen, he was on, the news, so he's got a ton of traffic, and he's selling his programs, and he's making millions of dollars. Sure. He's not offering any value, and more so, he's selling keto to everybody. I'm like, that's okay for a small percentage of the population. I think maybe you should go through a questionnaire first and see, does this make sense for me? And 9 times out of 10 is going to be no. And I just posted something about that the other day on my Facebook page about, the keto isn't a quick fix. It works for some, but it's certainly far from a fit for everybody. And this guy comes on and calls me a fucking idiot, and it's the best thing ever. And I'm like, this is what's out there.
Yes,
it's nuts. It's nuts.
It is. It's crazy.
I always go off on tangents on the keto for some reason. I tend to get all fired up about it.
I understand. I'm the same way. I am the same way. And I think too, a big reason why that kind of stuff is so popular with, somebody being able to get on there and just sell out the wazoo, because we're conditioned that we can get in amazing shape overnight. Mm-hmm. And these people feed into that as far as, buy this 30-day program. We all have seen the infomercials with the ripped woman or man, and they're on this crazy looking machine. And it's like, I did this for 30 days and it worked for me. Like, those people did not get to look the way they do from whatever they're trying to sell. I promise you. No. Like, it's twofold. It's not as complicated as we make it, but it does take some hard work, and it takes time. It takes doing this on a regular basis for a good amount of time to see results. Things are not going to happen overnight. There's no such thing as a 30 days to buff that will work. Like, it just doesn't exist unless you're doing something illegal, like steroids or something. Like, that doesn't exist. But we like quick fixes with the least amount of work. And so I feel like that's why a lot of people buy into these, because it feeds into that.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Everybody wants instant results. We're willing to pay for it. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's not there. And
sure.
Long and committed and a lot of hard work is not. There's no sex appeal. There's no marketing appeal.
Right.
And so Yeah. How do you sell it? I mean, you can't make, and I've talked with fitness entrepreneurs making 8 figures selling bullshit.
Yes.
Seriously.
Yes.
I'm like,
I have as well.
yeah. I mean, I know a guy that he's making a killing. I mean, a killing selling like a $19 program. It's like I think it's a 6 or 4 week program. And I bought it and I read it, and it was the most basic, useless. I'm like, what? And it's all marketing. It's all marketing because it's built up as the best thing you could possibly do for your body. You can get shredded in no time. You know, all these hot models on the cover. I'm like, this is not right. I mean, this is ridiculous. But, you know, when you have a huge ad spend and you can just scale the shit out of Facebook ads and you can just push tons of traffic, you're going to sell a lot of stuff. And if you're a good marketer, it's going to work. And you're always going to do better as a good marketer than actually somebody putting out quality information that's helping people. And that's, you know, the nature of business, but it drives, like I said, I mean, we can talk about this all night. It's just, I can't stand it. I can't stand it. So you said something that really resonates with me, and you wrote, getting fit isn't meant to be a quick Band-Aid fix. It should be a way of life that integrates with your own so that you can build and keep healthy habits that will carry you forever. That's it. I mean, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's right. Whether you're getting bigger, you're getting smaller, you're losing fat, you're gaining muscle, this is about your health, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what
we lose sight of that with the aesthetics. We place 100% of the focus on the aesthetics rather than how is this making me healthier as a whole person? Because I could go on for a very long time about just the mental shift that happened in my life as I got healthier and as I got stronger. It's not just a physical transformation. The way I thought about myself, carried myself, my confidence, like all that changes. And it's not just because of that I begin to look differently. It's because you're beginning to literally transform your body from the inside out. And that has an effect on your mind. Our food plays so much into our thinking and our mindset. Because it's just, you know, our brain functions better when it eats healthy food. It's just kind of a fact. So there's way more involved than just, you know, solely focusing on fitness from an aesthetic standpoint.
Well, yeah, for sure. And the one piece you just talked about, the confidence piece, is something that's overlooked a lot.
Yes.
You know, you went through a transformation. I didn't date in high school. I was well out of high school before I did any of that. But once I hit the gym in my early 20s, the mid-20s is when my body started to change, and I started getting more muscular, started getting more confidence, and my world changed. I mean, I used it basically to be, you know, go out and hook up with as many chicks as I could, which, that's what I did in my mid-20s. But coming from a kid in high school that never had a date, never kissed a girl, was bullied, picked on, like I was such a goofball. And then just because I decided to, make a change in my body, the confidence that came with it, my whole mentality changed about how I felt about myself, and then it translated into a lot of other things. And same with you. And that's what it's that's an important aspect too of whether you're getting bigger or like I said, you're getting smaller. You're going to start feeling better about yourself. You're going to like what you see in the mirror better, and that's going to affect every part of your life.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's big. So, I want to talk about finding your why, and I've seen you talk about this as well, and I think this is huge. And even, for guys that their sole goal is to let's get bigger and let's get more muscular, you have to have a why, as in a reason why you actually want to go through the sacrifices that it's going to take and the hard work that it's going to take and the disciplines it's going to take, right? You need to have a strong enough why that's going to carry you through all of those things that's going to see you to the end of this, and so you don't quit like, most people ultimately do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The why is crucial because so often, we can have a spurt of motivation and something to get us going, and that's good, but it's not going to keep us going for the long haul. It's our why that will keep us going when we don't feel like going. There's a great story that I always like to share of another trainer, and he was working with a high school kid. The kid was 18. He was in his senior year of high school, and he hired this trainer because he was saying, I've got to be the best football player on my team so that I can get a scholarship. And, at first glance, we think, well, that's his why right there. But this trainer was smart, and he kept asking why. Mm-hmm. And the kid was like, well, I want to be the best player so I can get a scholarship. He's like, well, why is it important for you to get a scholarship? He's like, because I can't afford to go to college. Mm-hmm. And he kept digging. He's like, well, why is it important for you to college? He's like, so I can get, a good job and be financially stable. He's like, well, why is it important for you to be financially stable? And it finally came out. He was raised by a single parent, his mom, and his mom had nobody to take care of her. They came from kind of a low socioeconomic background. And so his main solid goal, his why, was he wanted to be able to take care of his mom. And that was what motivated him. Like when he had, those days when he didn't feel like training, his coach would remind him like, hey, remember your mom. And that would cause him to dig deep and push through that workout. And so, don't just take the initial, well, I want to work out to look better. Like, keep digging, keep asking why until you literally can't come up with anything else when you keep asking that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And for those that don't have coaches, just asking yourself that. And
yes.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not easy. I mean, most guys, in my experience, aren't going to sit down by themselves and go through this, and actually take the time and think about it. Well, why do I want this? Well, why is this important? Why is this important? But it's a very important exercise because, yeah, like you said, once you get down to the bottom of it, there's something very emotional there that, may just be the thing that you need to get you, to stay on track for the long term because, we both know that most people quit.
Right.
I mean, that's a whole nother subject, but
yes.
Yeah. So I want to talk about just a couple more things here real quick.
Sure.
One is supplements. Now, I'm not a big fan of most supplements. I think it's a shady industry and there's people making tons of money off of stuff that we don't need. Mm-hmm. But, it's a little bit different when, your sole goal is to really just pack on a bunch of muscle, right? It's not easy to eat for that, especially as a little guy. If you're a small guy and you're trying to gain, let's say, 30 pounds of muscle, you know how hard it is to eat 4,000 calories or more. I mean, it's
hard, yes.
Yeah,
especially when those are coming from clean sources. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's miserable. So, yes, in that case, it may make sense to do that. What are some of the supplements that you use or used or recommend to your clients looking to do that?
So for me personally, I'm kind of with you. I don't like to rely too heavy on supplements. But there are definitely some key ones I use. For me personally, what I use, obviously, I do whey protein. I look for very clean proteins because there's a lot of really bad proteins out there that just have a lot of filler crap in them and aren't really what I like to call clean proteins. And so I'm selective with the proteins I use. I use creatine. I mix some. Sometimes I do a pre-workout. I try not to rely on a pre-workout all the time, but, I'll be honest, there are days when I'm dragging and I need something. Uh-huh. And so on those days, I'll add the creatine to that or take it by itself if I'm not doing a pre-workout. And then really the only other things I do is I take I do fish oil and glucosamine tablets just for joint health. And that's really the only 4 things that I take on a regular basis. Again, the protein is a great supplement to get extra calories in. And that's really the only thing I take supplement-wise for actual calories because the others have nothing to do with calories. But one thing that helped me a lot when I started is doing shakes. Mm-hmm. And, I would do, for instance, something like a non-fat milk with maybe some almond butter, some protein powder, a banana, and some plain Greek yogurt. And I would drink those in between meals because it's easier to drink your calories than to eat them, especially when you're eating a lot already. So that would really help me to, get those calorie counts up, especially at first when I was still learning the ropes of, what some calorie dense healthy foods that I can eat. Those were a great supplement that I kind of put in with my diet. I don't really do many shakes anymore, but they were super helpful when I started.
Yeah, for sure. I remember those Myoplex shakes way back.
Yes.
Those meal replacements, yeah. And so, they're not inherently bad. I mean, I'd prefer my clients ate their food, ate whole foods.
Right.
But yeah, if your goal is strictly to add weight and you need the calories and it's high quality, a good quality, and as you said, a good quality whey protein. If you go to Walmart, there's a good chance you're going to end up with a junky one, right? Because they can mass market it, or Costco, those giant 20-pound tubs for $40 or whatever it is. That's not high quality stuff, and
no,
it does make a difference.
It does, absolutely,
and it does. So, yeah. So, let me ask you this: so, for the guys that are listening, that their goal is to get bigger, right? They're a small guy, and their main goal is to add lean muscle.
Mm-hmm.
What are just a few things that you would tell them how to get started, down that path?
The first thing I would tell them is to start paying attention to what you eat. We live in an age where everything's at our fingertips, mm-hmm. and whether they get their information from me or somebody else who teaches whole nutrition and isn't trying to sell something, like, go and learn some things on your nutrition, because I really believe that that's the solid foundation. Because I think that you could actually lift weights, and if you never get your nutrition on track, you're never going to truly change your physical that dramatically until the nutrition comes in line. And so that's the first thing, like, educate yourself on food. I would say just start off small. Just start eliminating a couple things that off the bat are unhealthy. Maybe it's soda or candy bars or energy drinks. Mm-hmm. Just start small and just focus on cutting those things out completely from your diet for the first couple weeks, and replace the soda with water, or cut out fast food completely and just start making some homemade meals, and start small and build on that. So that's kind of the first thing, just to begin the process of transforming how you think and what you eat. And that's really the starting point that I really suggest anybody who's trying to change go from. Start with your nutrition, and don't look at it as a sprint. This is a marathon. You're in it for the long haul. So don't worry, if you don't see results off the bat. That's entirely normal. I always say you're going to get a year and 2 years and 5 years older, regardless of whether you start now. So don't think about how long it may take you. Just start.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably one of the most important things, right? Is just start, because
yes.
I've got so much to do. It's going to take so long, and then you're already out of the game.
Right.
So,
and you don't have to have everything on point from day one. It's just not possible to. And so many people, that keeps them held back. I don't know enough to start now. I'll start when I know more. You're never going to know enough. Just start with the small things that you do know and start implementing those, and you'll slowly build on those.
Yeah, man, for sure. So yeah, this has been awesome, and I appreciate your time. And where do you want people to find more about you?
So you can find me anywhere at Bones to Bulk, bonestobulk.com. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Bones to Bulk.
Okay. Sounds good, man. I appreciate it. I think we've learned some things here, and look forward to staying in touch.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure.
You got it, Bryan. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Basecamp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.